This podcast contains paid advertisements, but more on that later. Welcome to the O'Connor Bootstrap Podcast, where I discuss how you can grow your business by the bootstraps. This applies to all entrepreneurs, from the person just starting up to the one that is already well established. My goal is to help you grow. I am your host, Isaiah O'Connor. Okay, today I'm going to be starting with the first part of a two-part series about business strategy. Now, this is going to be some heavy stuff, so bear with me. There's going to be a little bit more nuts and bolts than I usually do, but I think this is something very important, especially if you're looking to rev up for a comeback with your current business, if you're looking at starting up a new business and you're really excited about it and you don't know quite what business you're going to do, and or you know what business you're going to do, but these are some considerations that may help you enter into the field you're wanting to go into a little bit smoother. Now, this is part one, and part two will build on this. So this part is barriers to entry, and what does that mean to you as an entrepreneur and as a bootstrapper? I'm going to be talking about what they are, how they work, the pluses and minuses, and what you can do to kind of overcome some of these barriers, and why you would want to do that or not, depending. So we're going to start there. The next part will be the 5 competitive forces, and both of these are ideas put forth by a man named Michael Porter, who has published a paper. I'm going to be linking to his first published paper where he actually talks about it. If you want to go more detail and really dig through, then I highly suggest checking out that link, reading his paper, researching his work. It's really good stuff. I will be just scratching the surface here. So let's jump into this. What is a barrier to entry? A barrier to entry is something that makes it hard for you to start up a business and or for other people to break into your competitive space of your business where you're working. So this is one of those kind of catch-22 things. It makes it hard. Some of these things will make it harder for you to get into a business, but then once you get into that business space, then it's hard for competitors to pop up. So, which is a good thing. So if you're trying to get in, it's much harder to do, but if you can break through, then it's much easier to operate and have higher profit margins, etc. So we'll start with that. That's the easier one here. So how do these barriers of entry work? What's the difference between a high barrier of entry or a low barrier of entry? All these different things. And then you have to also look at, there are sometimes barriers for exiting. How hard is it to get out of the industry once you're in it? Or sometimes it has an easy exit. You can just go out really quick, depending. So these are all factors. Now, I'm going to read the Wikipedia summation of this. And again, I highly recommend finding more articles that are more detailed on this because it's Wikipedia, after all. Now, this classification is according to Michael Porter. Again, Michael Porter being the key guy that I've come across, that I've read up on, that has where I've learned about this. High barriers to entry and high exit barriers, for example, the telecommunications and energy. You have a high barrier to entry and low exit barrier, for example, consulting, education. You have low barrier to entry and high exit barrier, for example, hotels, ironworks. And then you have low barrier to entry and low exit barrier, for example, retail, electronic commerce, etc. Now, with these markets, they combine these attributes. Markets with high entry barriers have few players and thus high profit margins. Markets with low entry barriers have lots of players and thus low profit margins. Markets with high exit barriers are unstable and not self-regulated, so the profit margins fluctuate very much over time. Markets with low exit barriers are stable and self-regulated, so the profit margins do not fluctuate much over time. And that's just kind of a rough example. And what does this mean to you as a bootstrapper? It's simple and not, of course. So, say you're like me. I'm a balloon guy. The barriers to entry into the balloon world are very, very low. You can, and I've seen a lot of people who wanted balloons for the kids' party. They didn't want to pay for the local clown to come in, so they went on YouTube. They learned a few balloon animals. They went on eBay, ordered a couple of bags of balloons, maybe a pump, and they watched some YouTube, and voila, they're now making some balloon animals for the kids, and they get excited about it, and they find it's fun, and they start a business, and they jump right in. More or less what I did. I went to YouTube to kind of polish up and learn more and expand where I was at the moment as far as skill level, but I have learned how to make balloon animals on missionary trips to give balloons to kids in missionary areas, and it was something I did for fun, and I jumped into it. Now, because there's very few barriers to entry into the balloon world, it's very easy to jump in. Competitors come by at, dime a dozen competitors. Competitors pop up left and right, and it makes it harder to make a decent profit because you have a lot of competitors. Now, fortunately or unfortunately for me, in the country I live in, which is Norway, there's not a lot of competition. And that's just because it's not a very well-known product. And that's a subject for a different podcast, being, is competition good or bad or both? So that's another whole thing. But just to sum up, when you're trying to sell a product and no one knows what it is or the value in it, it's hard to convince people to buy it. So that's kind of where I am. People understand sort of kind of what I do. But yeah, it's not a widely known thing. It's getting more and more known, but I don't have a lot of competitors. So even though I have a lower barrier to entry, I have a little bit better profit margins because there's not a lot of other competition at the moment, but that can change in a heartbeat. And a lot of these other barriers and competitive forces, which I'm going to talk about in the next podcast, are all interconnected. So just keep that in mind. So yeah, if you're a hobbyist and you're doing a hobby that a lot of people do, and it's really easy to start up, balloon artist, you knit, you sew things, you make things out of wood, little knick-knack things. This type of thing are very easy to get into. Very easy. It doesn't take a lot. If you know how to carve things, it's not hard to make a whole bunch of stuff. Art. There's a lot of artists out there. They make a lot of stuff and they try to sell it on Etsy or eBay or whatever. So being able to start these companies, it's very, very easy to do, but it's also a lot harder to make a good profit because you're going to be facing a lot of competition. Now, that doesn't mean it's impossible, and it doesn't mean you can't be successful and even wildly successful. It's just something to be aware of when you're going in, that this might be easy to start, but if it's that easy to start, then you're probably going to face a lot more steep competition than otherwise. Make it harder to sell and make money. Now, on the flip side on that is the people that succeed in these types of businesses and this is just, I don't have any data on this one, this is just personal experience, is people that succeed with these are usually the ones that are more a business person that does something they love versus somebody who just does something they love and doesn't really understand the way business works. And I've noticed the more people understand how business of what they do works, then the better they do. It just seems to be a correlation there. If you know how to run a business, you'll do good in a lot of different realms of business. Whereas if you don't know how to do anything about business and you jump in, it's a lot harder. Doesn't mean you can't do it, because I had some idea about business. I had read in some business books, and I had been an assistant manager and worked in retail and understood how to lead people and youth leader, all this other stuff. So that helped. But I still really, at that time, had no clue about business, how business worked, accounting, marketing, all that stuff. That came with time. So I'm not saying, again, you can do it. And as a bootstrapper, and considering most of the higher barriers of entry make it harder for bootstrappers to jump into those industries, it's usually the lower barriers to entries we jump into. But that's okay. There's ways to succeed, and no matter what you do, but it's just something to consider and think about how you're going to overcome these or strengthen your position or otherwise. So let's jump in here to what are the barriers of entry. Now, there's a lot of barriers to entry that people talk about. There's not one consensus out there. However, these are the ones that Michael Porter talks about, that I've heard about, that make a lot of sense to me. And I'm going to jump into some of those. The first one is economies of scale. That means if you need to sell your product or service, you need to sell it a lot of your product at low profit margin to make money. For example, you want to make AA and AAA consumer batteries, and you're going to make a better battery. That's great. That's a huge barrier to entry if you're a small guy, entrepreneur guy who invents a new better battery. You've got to come up with a way to mass produce your battery and market it to everyone pretty much in the entire country, because you've got Energizer and Duracell, not to mention all the generic brands of batteries. IKEA sells batteries. I mean, everyone sells batteries. And there's a huge scale on that. In order to make money on batteries, you have to sell a lot of them. You can't just sell one AA battery for a lot of money. You can't do it. You have to do it for a reasonable price. Otherwise, you won't succeed. So that's a scale. Product differentiation. This is a hard one in general, is if someone understands what a product is, especially a product, say, Jell-O or Q-tips or Kleenex. What do these three products have in common? Well, all three of these things are brand named items that are so well associated with their product that a lot of people, Band-Aid is another one, think that the product's name is the brand name. For example, A Band-Aid is the brand name of a bandage, self-adhesive bandage. Brand name, Band-Aid. Everyone just says Band-Aid. It's a brand. Q-tip, cotton swab, Q-tip. People just call it a Q-tip. Jello, a gel or a jelly, but everyone calls it Jello because of the brand. When you have such a big brand like that, differentiating a product might be harder to do. Capital requirements. Some businesses take a lot of money to get involved in. You want to become an oil explorer, you might be able to do it to a limited amount on your own private property. But if you're going to compete with the likes of BP, Exxon, etc., you're going to need a huge amount of money just to get started. Huge investment. Cost disadvantages. Independent of side, there's some things that are, it doesn't matter if you're a big or a small operation, the cost disadvantages are harder to overcome. For example, gold mining. I've seen people, hobbyists, gold mine, and they work really hard all day long, and they're mining their little claim, or they're off up in the woods somewhere at a river somewhere, and they're digging up gold, and they have a great day, and they talk about all this money they made, and they maybe find $200, $300, $400 worth of gold, and they work really hard, and it's a good day's work, and they spent $700 on equipment just to get there. And of course, they're hobbyists and they're having fun, and it's a hobby, and they're not going to get rich, but they might be able to kind of keep their hobby going for a little bit longer doing it this way. However, even with a massive mine, it's really, really expensive, and you have to crush and go through tons and tons of ore for ounces of gold. So it doesn't matter how big you are, it's going to really be harder to work because that's why gold's so expensive. It's really hard to get. There's a cost disadvantage just being in there. So you have to do spend a lot of money just to make it. Access to distribution channels. This doesn't affect services nearly as much as it does products, and quite honestly, I think this is a little bit older, but because there's a lot more distribution channels via online services, sales, etc. So that does kind of weaken this. And then government policy. Sometimes there's government policies that can be a barrier to business. And I've looked around. There's also what they call artificial barriers of entry, where companies will try to keep competitors out, try to shut the doors, try to keep people from joining in. For example, I heard about a new bleach company that was going to try to take on Clorox bleach, and they're going to launch in this tiny little town in Maine. Hopefully, Clorox would not notice their new company coming out. Clorox found out about it and promptly delivered 1 full gallon of bleach to every single house in the town where they were going to launch their new bleach product, thus immediately ending that whole marketing idea. And they just dropped the product completely because, yeah, they couldn't compete with Clorox bleach because they are the bleach company. You don't mess with them. Anyway, so that's kind of an artificial barrier to entry. You have a company like Clorox that just uses a huge amount of clout, huge amount of brand recognition, and huge amount of resources just to crush any competition out of existence within seconds, if they can. So there's that type of thing where you have active, and there's a lot more. This is such a complex subject. Again, this is just an introduction. To get this in your head, this is something you need to think about. This is the most important thing. What you need to think about when you're looking at your business. What type of market forces are going to be for or against you as you go in. What you can do to lower the barriers for entry for yourself and raise them against your competitors. It's a combination. And then there's, again, natural. Some of these are natural. barriers. Again, the economies of scale. Sometimes you need to sell a cheap product to millions of people to make a profit. Some products, and that's just the natural thing from the type of product. So again, these are just different things to consider as you're going in. And quite honestly, I'm going to focus on the low barrier to entry things primarily. But again, this is just kind of a primer. This is just an introduction to the concept, because there's papers upon papers upon papers and blogs upon blogs upon blogs detailing all these different aspects. This is just one of those business things that most people, when they're running a business, don't have a clue about, and or getting ready to launch into a business have no clue about this type of business strategy idea, that there could be barriers to entry, that these barriers, even if you have entered the market, these barriers could be helping you or hurting you and you don't even realize it. Like I said, back to the balloon industry, I see a constant flow of newbies popping up. And I've seen some people who are been in the business for years and years and years, especially some of them that have been in before YouTube was invented, before Facebook and the internet was really a thing. And they worked really, really hard. And when they first started, the barriers to entry were a lot higher. It was a lot higher to find a supplier of balloons. It was a lot higher of good balloons. I know I tried when I first started playing around balloons. I had a hard time finding a good supply of balloons. I found a clown. I could get a bag of 100 balloons every so often. I had to go through him, and I could get one. I got one probably once every 6 months or so. I mean, it wasn't that easy to get a hold of. And of course, the internet was around at the time. I just never thought about it, quite honestly, because the internet was still new enough that it wasn't the first place you thought to go to buy something. You would still go to the mall to try to find what you needed. So these people, these old timers, come in, and now they're having all this competition from people who, hey, look, I went down to, hey, I saw a sale on eBay. I just bought 1,000 balloons for $20 on sale in a pump, and I watched a YouTube video, and now I'm starting my own business. And they're taken aback. They're like, oh no, why are these people doing it? People shouldn't be giving away things on free. Why do people tell people how to do things on YouTube? Why? And they're really upset about it and very defensive of it. And or big players come on the decoration side, all of a sudden, big chain like Party City, Dollar Stores, Dollar Trees are selling balloon decor kits that people can buy and just make the balloon decor at home for a fraction of the price that we charge to do the same thing. So when these barriers to entry are lowered, it can lower your profit margins. It can lower your things when they're lowered across the board. And it happens. These can go up and down. Barriers can be lowered in some fields and raised in other fields. And it's just something, again, to consider. So if you want to go into a field that has higher barriers of entry, then you need to look into, maybe funding, what it takes. Do a lot of research. The higher the barrier to entry, the better the profit margins, the easier it is to operate once you get going. But it's also one of those things that might take some time. It might be hard. It might be a struggle. But be prepared. At least you know why it's so hard. But again, it comes back to that building up momentum thing. If you can get in, you have a lot of momentum behind you, and it's very easy to operate once you're in. Now, again, it's harder to get in. So I'm not saying don't go after these high barrier to entry places. It's great. I'm saying go wherever you feel like you need to go. However, you got to remember that it's often, as bootstrappers, we like the low barrier to entry places. for example, like I said, balloons, but for example, high barrier to entry, there's not a lot of people that are going out there deciding to build rockets to compete with Elon Musk and SpaceX. There's not a lot of people out there. And that's what's a very incredibly high barrier to entry. You need a lot of money. You need to know how to find good um, engineers and scientists and funding and getting a lot of funding. And there's a lot of paperwork and retail work. Rockets can also be used not just for space, but they can be used for war. So the government's really interested if you're playing around with rockets. So all these things can make jumping into the rocket industry a hard thing to do. However, if you you're at this point, if you're not already in, you probably won't be. Elon Musk did it anyway because he's Elon Musk. He had a lot of money to play with and he did it. So, but most bootstrappers aren't at that point. But starting your own little catering service is fairly easy. Starting your own flower shop is fairly easy. Starting your own balloon company, fairly easy. Start selling your own paintings, fairly easy. So the question becomes, well, when I start this business, I'm going to have a lot of competition. There's a lot of other players out there. So what am I going to do to win in this area? Now, as a bootstrapper, I'm going to say, go for those low barrier to entry ones. Just do an amazing job. Just figure out a way to differentiate yourself, to do something that other people don't do. Provide extra value and run your business as a business. That's going to make a big difference. The people, again, that I've seen in my industry, the ones that are the most successful are also the most business-like. Again, they run it as a business. They think about business. They think about the forces involved. They think about everything like that that goes into what they do, and they are successful. So, again, if you want a low, the low, you know, the low barrier to entry, the other thing about low barriers to entry is it's also very easy to exit. And one of those things is, yeah, you're going to have a lot of competitors, but if you do it right, you're going to be standing strong and watching competitors come and go, come and go, come and go, and you will stay steady because you've built something strong. And as a bootstrapper, that's where I am. That's my viewpoint. Yeah, I'm not going to say jump out and go build rockets. If you feel like it and that's what you really want to do, go for it. Just most bootstrappers aren't going to be able to go out and start up a rocket company like Elon Musk. However, most people can go out and they're really good at landscaping or whatever, and how you go about it, how you market, how you build your business, how you build repeatability, how you get and retain customers, how you get customers to value your business, how you get customers to um, market for you, promote you because they love you. All the stuff that makes the biggest difference. Matter of fact, one guy I've talked about before, a guy named David Mahoney, he teaches, he helps people, he has DVDs out, and he has a large crew, and he hires a lot of people. And somebody asked him, I heard him in an interview, aren't you worried that someone is going to work for you, learn all your secrets, and then go open up a shop and compete against you? His answer, no. Most people that work here, they can learn how I do things, how I build balloons and all stuff. But it takes more than just knowing how to make the balloons to run a business. And they have no business sense. They don't have the customer service sense. They don't have all the sense of what happens. And he even said he's even had at least one, if not more, people that have done that, worked for him for some time, quit, opened a competing business, and went out of business within a year because they did not understand how to operate a business. They understood how to make balloons. But making balloons and operating a business are two separate things. Just about anyone can make balloons, but not everyone can make balloons and operate it and have it function as a business. So yeah, just on that note, I learned about this because I listened to a lot of stuff on Audible. Uh, and again, I've been beating Audible to death because they've been my biggest sponsor right now, and I'll pay a lot of time to sit around and listen to stuff. So, hey, go check out Audible if you want to help me out. It helps a lot. You get 2 free Audible originals. You get a free Audible book on a free 30-day trial. If you use my link, then it helps me out. Check them out. And just always be aware of looking for things when you're listening to books or looking around at podcasts and whatnot, that even non-business related stuff, which will be a podcast in the near future, can come in to your business realm. And it's because I was on Audible and looking around for business books and looking around for books on careers and looking around for books about negotiating, etc. All this stuff that I came across is very important information. So always be out there, always be learning. Anyway, with that haphazard promo spot, I'm working on that. You guys have a good day. Let's get through this hard time together and start looking at these market forces. Next week or next podcast, we're going to talk about the 5 competitive forces that you need to know about and be able to overcome and plan for as you go. And it's very important and it's connected. But again, it's a deep, hard issue, so we're going to take some more time to do that one. You have a good day. Bye-bye. Before I forget, because of the whole coronavirus thing, I'm expanding my free consultation from 1/2 hour to 1 full hour of consultation. And if you're a $10 Patreon or above, you get 4 hours of a consultation with that. So you'll have all have a good day. I would love to chat with you, see where you're at. If you're confused about the barriers to your business or and you want to know why you might be struggling, what some of the barriers are in your field, how to overcome them. There's too much competition, all that good stuff. Give me a shout out. Send me an email. We'll chat. I'll try to help you out. You have a good day. Bye bye. Okay, just as a reminder, we do offer a free 1/2 hour, no obligation consultation. All you need to do is go to our website and contact us through there, or you can contact me directly at my O'Connor Bootstrap podcast Facebook group or our Atheoz.com Facebook page as well. And if you would like to support this channel, the best thing you can do, of course, is to like and share and subscribe. That helps the most. Or you can check out one of our affiliate links. And of course, I do have a PayPal and a Patreon account, and the links will be in the description below. Thank you very much. You all have a good day. You have been listening to the O'Connor Bootstrap podcast and Atheoz Business Solutions podcast. For other podcasts, past episodes, and related blogs, please check out our website at www.atheoz.com. That is www.atheoz.com or theoz.com. Until next time, I've been your friendly neighborhood entrepreneur, Isaiah O'Connor.